welcome to Helicon West. I'm Shanan Ballam. I'll be your MC and your presenter this evening. Thank you for being here. Helicon West is an uncensored public reading series. We regularly host published authors alongside community writers to promote and support all levels of skill, ability, and craft. If you would like to read during the open mic, you can sign up on the sheet near the coffee service. If you would like to donate to keep Helicon West going, we have bookmarks on the coffee table with a QR code link. We acknowledge the help that Helicon West operates on the territory of the northwestern band of the Shoshone Nation. Our events are made possible with support from Sugar House Review, the Logan Library, the USU English Department, and community volunteers. For our full WAD acknowledgement statement, interviews with featured readers, and merch and more, visit heliconwest.wordpress.com. We have a couple of requests in our new home in the library. First, during our event, please shut the doors behind you when entering or leaving the room. Second, if you partake of the coffee, please use a lid and keep the cup in your hand to minimize the likelihood of a spill. Consider bringing your own reusable drink container with a screw-on lid. That would be good for the library and good for the planet. Okay, so I am Shanan Ballam, and I'm the current Poet Laureate of Logan City, and I'll be leading the workshop tonight. I have 3 published poetry collections and one to be published at the end of May entitled First Poems After the Stroke. I survived a massive ischemic stroke in January 2022, which left the entire right side of my body paralyzed. I also had expressive aphasia, which means I couldn't speak. I've had to work hard over the past 2 years to regain the use of my right arm and hand. I have also relearned how to speak. It was through teaching my classes and teaching workshops like this one that I am able to regain my speech. So I'm happy to be here teaching tonight to get more practice. Okay, so welcome to my generative workshop. You should all have a handout. It's called Poetry Memory. Do you all have one? Tonight we'll read 2 of Star Holbrook's poems, and she was the inaugural Poet Laureate of Logan City. And one poem by Elizabeth Bishop. We'll compare and contrast Star's poems with Bishop's. I hope the poems help you to unearth some of your own childhood memories. We're going to read all the poems and discuss them first, and then I'll give you some time to work on the 2 sets of prompts, and you can find those on pages 2 and 3. We'll take 5 minutes for the first set and 3 for the second set. And then I'll ask for a volunteer to share one of the most surprising things they remembered from each set of poems. I think you'll see. So I'm going to turn to the right now. So I'm going to read the first quote for you. Anyone who has survived childhood has enough material to write for the rest of his life. And Flannery O'Connor said that. And Joan Didion said, a place belongs forever to whoever claims it hardest, remembers it most obsessively, wrenches it from itself, shapes it, renders it, loves it so radically that he remakes it in his own image. And so I think you'll see how Star's first poem reflects that Didion quote. As As river once removed is read, I want you to notice how the sensory details enrich the experience. Notice the verbs, and I want you to remember what details resonate with you. What do the verbs add to the poem? And then would Star like to read River Once Removed for us?
Are you sure? Okay.
Yeah. If you don't want to, then you don't have to.
Thanks, Shan. I haven't read this for a long time. River once removed. Barefoot, I walk the steel pipe that carries water down Shale Hill to fields where my family worked the land along Bear River. The siphon's silver coolness sings beneath my feet, metallic pings reverberating down the valley, river curving through cottonwoods, pastures dotted with cattle. Cold shoots up my ankles like the ache of memory, shifting, changing course, shallowing to gentle riffles. Gone, the old swimming hole where the river bent and split for an island of trees, a place to pull from floating, lie back in the shade on a still, hot day. At 10 years old, I skinny dipped with my sister, hiding from brothers who told on us, boy cousins who spied. We snaked out of suits, water swirling over skin, bellies gritty with sand, scraped by rocks, carp, driftwood. Uncles taught us to catch crawfish, turn over rocks and grab fast, squeeze hard at the back where the arms connect so claws wave and grasp. We hooked their soft bellies for fishing, gathered rock rollers, left night crawlers for town kids, for cousins who didn't know better, cousins once removed, girls who wore two-piece bathing suits, drank gin, smoked cigarettes, and told us about sex, but I had already guessed. Run the river down my legs, pulled the river from my hair, wiped the river from my face. At 12, my life began to shift, erode its banks. Crawfish disappeared. Cousins got pregnant or died too young. My mother, who could never save me, went to work to keep the farm. Sisters married and gone. Dad dead from cancer. At 13, I left the river, left my family, the farm, that troubled world, left the cousins, boys who touched my breasts, men who held me underwater, left the valley that carried the river, that carried them into me. Slapping my feet on the siphon, I smooth the riffles in my mind, remember 13, 12, and 10. Remember the way I constructed my island, the moss, the grass, the rocks all around, the places I cushioned, the roar, the necessary hardness.
Okay, what sensory details did you notice in this poem? Anybody?
Oh, shoots up my ankles.
Okay, what else?
His skin scraped by rocks and his belly gritty with sand.
Mm-hmm. Good. Other details? Other sensory details?
The river running down her legs, pulled from her hair, wiped from her face.
Good.
The siphon silver coolness.
Mm-hmm. Good. What did you notice about the verbs? How do the verbs enrich this poem?
A lot of them carry a sound component, like they're not just an action, like they have another sensory detail connected to them, like slapping your feet on the siphon, or singing beneath my feet. Like they're not just an act, a movement.
Okay, yeah, so they work in two ways, many of them. How else do the birds enrich the home?
They're like unusual sometimes in places like we snake out of suits, like you don't really hear that, but it
Mhm.
definitely like gives a visual and a feeling that you wouldn't otherwise.
Okay, good. What details are resonating with you about this poem?
When she says, run the river down my legs, pulled the river from my hair, wiped the river from my face. Because you could just say water, but like saying the river kind of personifies it a little bit. Makes it feel like more.
Yeah, good. Other details that are resonating?
Like the valley that carried the river that carried them into me. Like it's just such a neat way to think of home and the people that make home and leaving home.
Okay, good. Other details?
Really like the end, because we had so many physical details, but then the necessary hardness is more, as I read it anyway, about the person. So we're looking at different kind of hardness.
Yeah, good. Any other details that are resonating?
It's, to me, it's very much a poem about bodies, and like there's so much about different parts of bodies, feet and skin and barefoot, and
Yeah.
it's very corporeal in that way.
And I'm also noticing too how just like the line we hooked their soft bellies exemplifies that the birds are also coming in the middle of the lines, right? They're literally coming into the bellies of each line.
Good. Other details? Let's move on to the next poem. And can I have a volunteer to read On the River by Star Cobra? Yeah, Asher.
Can everybody hear me if I just stand here and read loud?
Yeah.
Okay. On the river, one, that bridge, the one I walked to daily in summer, those girders, riveted steel, fish, those trout, herring, carp, occasional bluegill, this dry, grass-burnt thirst when I remember, that childhood, rural, rotary phone number still tripping off my tongue, 0393R3, and that boy, fifth grader I loved aloud on the party line 3 hours at a time, Cousin Bonnie picking up, listening in, waiting for her daily mother-daughter conversation, that line strung along the gravel road that ran beside the river all the way to town. 2. That river, the one I grew up drowning in, that river I went down to like religion, the one I come back to gasping for all it cannot hold, those long gone years of summer, leather-skinned, barefooted, tattered like the striped shirt my sister wore, handed down 3 times from older brothers, traded in fall for dresses, a string of schoolyard friends, ripples. That boy who hung up the phone, those parents who died and never stopped calling, that lingering hint of family, that long line of us, the splintering off like planks from a raft.
Okay, nice job. Okay, what details are resonating with you about this poem? This poem?
I really like how the river was grown up drowning in it, but also went down to it like religion, and like those two shouldn't fit together, and yet because they're put together, it creates such a dynamic picture of what that life was.
Okay, good.
I really like the dry grass burnt thirst when I remember juxtaposed over those long gone years of summer. I think can see how powerful taste detail is, because that's a taste detail. Other details that are resonating about this poem.
The specificity of the striped shirt that was passed down 3 times,
Mm-hmm.
and also the idea of a party line, because I think unless you're from a really rural area, you don't know what that is.
Right.
But people used to have to share a phone, sort of, right? Like, you'd have to wait for your neighbor to be done before you could make a call. And that just sets such a specific space and time for this poem, and that's really interesting.
Did you want?
I was thinking about the verb tripping off my tongue in that phrase. I really enjoyed that.
Okay, good. Other details?
Those parents who died and never stopped calling just adds layers to the poem for sure.
Good. What about the repetition of that? It's repeated several times. How does that work in this poem?
It implies something very specific, like that one, not just a river or a boy, it's that one.
Yeah, good. Other things you notice? Let's move on to the Elizabeth Bishop poem. As I said in the first part of this workshop, we're going to read all the poems before we get into the prompts. So can I have a volunteer to read First Death in Nova Scotia by Elizabeth Bishop? Yeah.
First Death in Nova Scotia by Elizabeth Bishop. In the cold, cold parlor, my mother laid out Arthur beneath the chromographs, Edward, Prince of Wales, with Princess Alexandra, and King George with Queen Mary. Below them on the table stood a stuffed loon, shot and stuffed by Uncle Arthur, Arthur's father. Since Uncle Arthur fired a bullet into him, he hadn't said a word. He kept his own counsel on his white, frozen lake, the marble-top table. His breast was deep and white, cold and caressable. His eyes were red glass, much to be desired. Come, said my mother. Come and say goodbye to your little cousin Arthur. I was lifted up and given one lily of the valley to put in Arthur's hand. Arthur's coffin was a little frosted cake, and the red-eyed loon eyed it from his white, frozen lake. Arthur was very small. He was all white, like a doll that hadn't been painted yet. Jack Frost had started to paint him the way he always painted the maple leaf, forever. He had just begun on his hair a few red strokes, and then Jack Frost had dropped the brush and left him white forever. The gracious royal couples were warm in red and ermine. Their feet were well wrapped up in the ladies' ermine trains. They invited Arthur to be the smallest page at court. But how could Arthur go, clutching his tiny lily, with his eyes shut up so tight and the roads deep in snow?
Okay, thank you. Good job. And so, I'm gonna ask the same question that I asked in the last poem, and that's Elizabeth Bishop uses a lot of repetition. How is it not redundant? How is the repetition not redundant in this poem?
Well, almost all of the Arthurs that are mentioned are different people, and so it's like the same name repeated, but it's not the same person, and it kind of makes you think you have to suss out which they're talking about, so that's kind of interesting.
Okay, good. Other repetitions that you notice?
I notice the whites and the reds, the colors of death and violence in the poem, and yet everything in the poem is written in sort of the child's view, but yet you know it's an adult that's writing it, and so the colors really come to life. The snow, the skin, the gunshot, even though you don't see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good point.
And to add on to that, I think the limited use of colors, the fact that there's only 3, really kind of drives that point
does she include the loon? What is the loon, what can the loon represent?
I think it speaks to the innocence of Arthur. Like, Arthur is clearly a small child who has died, and the loon is an animal that has done nothing to any of them, and it wasn't even killed for, you know, to be eaten or whatever. It seems like it was killed to be stuffed and put on the table and preside as though it's, you know, noble. And so it's kind of bringing that sense of like nobility into like what a sacrifice this family is making, that they had to lose their child so young.
Good.
At first I thought maybe the poem was gonna be about the loon, and that was the first death. And it pulled me in that way, and then smacked me with the fact that it's really about a human child laying out as well.
Okay, that's a
And
good point.
it had been talked about if I had, you know, I read it closely and I saw that it wasn't necessarily said that way, but the way it pulled me in, I thought it was going to be about the bird, and then
Yeah. It's
Ouch.
understandable, yeah.
I think it's interesting that the maple leaf was Jubilee Forever was mentioned, and it said there's death in Nova Scotia, so this probably takes place in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So
Good. Yeah, I think it does. Other thoughts, other details resonating?
the performative aspect of it all, right? Even the repetition of Arthur, right? It's like, I don't know, it's just like this mind-numbing, like, why are we here, Arthur?
Yeah.
Well, the choice of using the name Arthur, because Arthur is such a loaded, like, there's King Arthur and the, you know, the round table and everything, and so it's got so much history in the choice of using that name that's going to be repeated. And like, my mind, it was almost looking for where does that come in, because I expect it when I see that name.
Okay, good.
and yet it does have other royalty in it too.
Yeah.
It makes you
Right.
think of that. Yeah.
There's contrasts in here. Can you see the contrast?
The loon is red-eyed, and usually when you think of red eyes, it carries a demonic connotation to it, but Arthur's eyes are sewed up tight, and so we don't know what's happened to Arthur's eyes. He can't see.
Okay, good.
We've got the gracious royal couples, and then we also have Arthur, who's the smallest page.
Yeah, good.
And there's cold and there's warm.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was looking for. The others are good too. I never thought about those. So does anybody else have anything to say about this poem?
There's kind of a morbid humor in it. I mean, not just the mention of the loon that kept its own counsel, which is kind of darkly funny, but the fact that the speaker is comparing a dead child to this stuffed loon. They're both there to be looked at and to be gawked over, and if you spend too much time thinking about it, that's kind of dark. It's messed up, you know?
Yeah,
But that's interesting to me.
okay, good. Other thoughts? Okay. Well, let's move on to prompts. So, turn back to page 2, and I want you to jot down a few words or phrases for each recollection, and keep this list for possible poem topics. And can I get somebody, well, first of all, I'm just gonna give you 5 minutes to do this, and can I get somebody to read the entire 8 points recall?
I can do that, Shanan.
Yeah.
Number 1, recall a favorite childhood swimming area. Number 2, recall a memorable experience you had while swimming as a child. Number 3, recall a memorable experience fishing or catching insects or animals as a child. 4, recall an important animal from your childhood. 5, recall an important landmark from your childhood. 6, recall an outfit you wore as a child. 7, recall one characterizing detail about an adult from your childhood. And 8, recall a food or taste from your childhood.
Okay. You guys have 4 or 5 minutes to do this. So go ahead. Okay, you can go ahead and finish up your last thought there. And now we're going to turn to page 3. And the same thing as before, but I'll just give you like 3 minutes to do this one. Will somebody please read exercise, making a list of childhood memories, part 2 for me?
One, recall a time in childhood when you were picking fruit or vegetables. 2, recall a time in childhood you were on a roof or up high, such as in a tree. 3, recall a room in your house or a relative's house that is vivid to you. 4, recall a magical game or toy from childhood. 5, recall your first experience with death.
Okay, thank you. So now, take like 3 minutes and do this one. Okay, you go ahead and finish up your last thought. And then would somebody like to volunteer to tell us about something surprising that you wrote for any of these prompts?
Yeah, I got one. It was an outfit you wore as a child. I used to have this pink, like, kind of belly shirt. It had black felt words on it, and it said, "Ask me no questions and I'll tell you no lies."
Okay, would anybody else like to share? Yeah.
For me, it was the catching insects one. There was one time in elementary school where there was a grasshopper in the girls' bathroom, and I was the only one who was willing to like catch it and take it back outside.
Okay, good. Others?
For the fishing, this is more of a tween than specifically like childhood, but sucking cheese sauce from fries off my fingers because my stepdad would go bank fishing and there was like a bait shop, and my best friend and I would watch the shirtless older boys working the fishing boats in the middle of the lake while eating cheese fries and sucking the cheese off.
That's great. Okay. So now we're gonna move on to the last exercise. This is called mapping the neighborhood, and I learned it from my mentor, Ken Brewer. One of my mentors, Ken Brewer, and he was a poet laureate of Utah. So, and I suggest that you try this one out. So can I have a volunteer to read all of the steps for me?
Mapping the neighborhood. 1. Draw a map of a childhood neighborhood you remember well. Be as detailed as you'd like. Sketch in the houses, streets, trees, and other important landmarks. 2. Mark with an X places on the map where something significant happened to you. 3. Choose one of the significant experiences. 4. For the experience you selected, list several details for each of the 5 senses: smell, sound, sight, taste, and touch. 5. Using a list of the 5 senses, write a poem about your significant experience.
So you can work on whatever you want to, and how long should we do them? Till 8 o'clock?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fine.
8 o'clock. So we have 22 minutes to write. So, does anybody else want to sign up? Anybody else?
Can.
Okay. So, does anybody else want to read?
Did you get Asher?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what's your name? You're sorry.
Atlas.
Okay. So, Aaron, well, Naomi?
Yeah, I know, I'm confusing. It's okay.
And then Star, Asher, and Atlas. We'll just read them all.
Yeah.
So, okay. And I forgot to say that if you don't want it to be recorded, then you should just tell Joseph to mix it.
Hello, peeps.
Hi.
So everybody knows me as Erin, unless you're new to Helicon. I'm going by Naomi now because I want to. So anyway, I'm Naomi, and here's a poem. So, alright, I'm gonna try and find a way to be near the microphone. Anyway, I'll just try and get up. Okay. Alright.
Yeah, that's good, it picks
Alright,
you right
guys,
up.
I don't know what to do with all my blindness and stuff, it's no problem. Okay, never mind, sorry. Alright, this is called Not My First Kiss. Walking home from Blue's house, my sister is half a block ahead of me. I stop at the black gate that holds in Dale's red brick 2-story house. The night air is cool, skies sliding from blue to purple. My pink jelly shoes click like high heels. I slip them off to feel the still warm sandpaper prickle of the glowing white of new sidewalk. I look away for a moment, glance at the rising moon, just a moment, and it happens. A kiss from the boy I love. On Shy's moon-white cheek. My mouth tastes like castor oil, a giant spoonful, when she tells me. Thanks.
just want to say thanks again to Shannon. She's so inspiring. I can always find something when she does these workshops. So if you ever hear of one from her again, be sure to come because it's good stuff, huh?
Yep.
So I did this one from Childhood Memories Part 2. Apricot nectar smelled tart, fresh, tangy, like the quick snick of fragrance that hit the back of my nose when opening a just-picked sunlight caught. To make the nectar, Mother mashed the fresh, ripe apricots, dark, deep, soft, orange-pink, into the cone center of an aluminum ricer with a rounded, pounding mashing stick, knob-handled, smooth with years of use. The ricer held in a three-legged aluminum stand with a double circle at the top for it to hold steady. Out of the 1,000 tiny holes punched in the sides of the ricer, bright spurts and runnels of apricot popped out and slid down into the big bowl Mother had placed underneath the stand. When the apricot mush, that's what we call the thick nectar that flopped and glistened like gelatin, like hot cream of wheat cereal. When the apricot mush filled the bowl under the ricer, Mother ladled out cups of it into small bowls for each of us and sprinkled nutmeg over the top of our orange-pink apricot gloss. The smell of the nutmeg on the fresh mashed fruit, a memory that never leaves, even if I haven't smelled it, haven't tasted it for 50 years. The final touch over the top of the nutmeg gloss, a pour of fresh, cold cream from the blue 2-quart mason jar in the fridge, cream rising to the top of the milk just milked from our cows that morning, now cold and thick and perfect, white cream marbling the orange fruit with brown sprinkles of nutmeg, a spoon, a pucker of tartness, a blister of spice, a comfort of cream, a home, the one that bloomed before it all came apart like petals of falling apricot blossoms.
Okay. So I go to the Union of Table Scraps poetry workshop group, and Star has been writing these really condensed sort of poems, and I kind of was inspired and wanted to write something in that style. So this is called Field Dressing. Field dressing. Like the deer Andrew's father shot, gutted and hung draining in backyard, I too hollowed out my body, scraped the cavity clean of debris, strung my carcass out to dry. Hot blood once pumped rivers beneath unforgiving flesh spreads now across 3 days old, crisp windswept snow. My only wish that this meat provides needed sustenance, helps another's body through aching darkness where winter's sun is missing.
Wow.
And then this one's kind of about a friend. It's not quite finished, but I wanted to share it because it's in my heart right now. So, in the aftermath of caring about an alcoholic, you blew through my life like a late summer thunderstorm rolling across a sandy beach. Bright flashes of a compassionate young man with a dry wit and an artist's eye scattered through a hideaway haze of day-drunk afternoons, stumbling face first and fully clothed into my bed to sleep it off. Debris hidden like seashells biding time until you return to collect them into your pockets. A half-smoked Camel cigarette resting beside the books on my bookshelf. Your favorite lighter lost inside the folds of my blue flannel sheets. A bottle of bottom shelf vodka tucked behind the closet door, half empty. A brand new box of condoms, only 3 missing. The hollow behind my ear, waiting for your lips to brush. Waiting for you to rain kisses across my cheeks and eyelids. Waiting for your breath warm against my skin, a gentle wind that fills my empty sails when you call me baby. And I worried if perhaps it was me that caused you to fall off the raft of your recovery, or if it was your own self not fighting to stay above the waves. And then one more, and this one's kind of angry, and I make no apologies for that. Temples. Bring up a chain, brilliant white morning glories climbing along Wasatch Mountains. Call their names off your mother's bingo card, mark them, every one. Spill crimson ink across pristine lawns, manicured with tears, paint their walls with virgin blood.
Hi, my name's Atlas. This is my first time here.
Welcome.
Thanks. This is, I call it an ode to Sweet Mother Night, and just because spring's coming. Winter has crept her slim fingers into my living and made quite a home for herself. I've always loved the night, but hated the cold. But as my eyes widen with frostbitten tears, I see that they are intertwined. They are one. I am into being with them, and now I see I can make a home out of her as she has done to me. I used to speak to the stars and moon every night, for he was my only friend whom I trusted. We talked for hours some nights, others I cried as she attempted to blow the tears from my cheeks with her influential wind. And sometimes all I said was goodnight, and Key slept without my warmth. I usually spoke to Key from a high place so that we'd be alone and closer. Then if we touched Mother Earth's dirt as well. I don't think the sky likes to share me much because I always felt like the ground world disappeared once my toes left the crust. Mother Night, I'm sorry we don't talk much anymore. I'm craving your embrace and the words of wisdom you've whispered against my chest so that it may reach my heart faster. I have given ode to the sun much more because she's much more shy this time of year, but now I realize it's because you have so much more to say and teach me.
Okay, would anybody else like to sign up? Okay. So that's it for Helicon. When is the next one? When it will be?
28th, and it's gonna be the creative writing contest winners from USU.
I think
And
it
it'll
might be
be
the
here.
It might be the 25th.
Oh. Should I look?
It'll be the
Let's
25th.
look.
It's the Thursday.
25th, okay.
And is that here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's here.
Cool.
Right here.
That's awesome.
I know, I can actually stay for it this time.
And we're gonna open up the other room, and so bring people.
Okay.
We
Thanks
can
for
fit
hosting us,
100
Joseph. That's
people
awesome.
in here.